through infant industries and industries development, product development, market access, and expansion to domestic, regional, and global value chains and networking. Through our Solar Mamas initiatives, we are expanding the nurturing of emerging industrialists in the designing, manufacturing, installation, and maintenance of renewable energy components by ordinary young South African women. This will continue to be our flagship project after conceptualization, taking into consideration lessons learned from the first cohort that came back yesterday. We congratulate this group of 22 young women from the provinces of Limpopo, Northwest, and Free State. Program Director, the year 2024 is significant as it marks several milestones in the struggle for the emancipation of women and their pursuit for the right to self-determination and self-actualization in all areas of human development. First, 2024 marks 70 years since the adoption of the Women's Charter, a declaration of intent by the Federation of South African Women, which clearly defined the rights and privileges for women by women in South Africa. This Women's Month, 3 decades short of a century since the adoption of the Women's Charter, we draw inspiration from this charter and affirm their bold declaration that, I quote, "We, the women of South Africa, hereby declare our aim of striving for the removal of all laws, regulations, conventions, and customs that discriminate against us as women and that deprive us in any way of our inherent right to the advantages, responsibilities, and opportunities that society offers to any one section of the population," unquote. Secondly, alongside our democratic dispensation, 2024 also marks 30 years since the adoption of the Women's Charter for Effective Equality, adopted by the National Women's Coalition structure in 1994. 3 decades later, we echo their sound belief that, and I quote, "For decades, patriarchy, colonialism, racism, and apartheid have subordinated and oppressed women within political, economic, and social life. At the heart of women's marginalization is the patriarchal order that confines women to the domestic arena and reserves for the men the arena where political power and authority resides," unquote. Fighting patriarchy should therefore be considered a central tenet and weapon in our continuing struggle for a more just and inclusive society. Across professional, educational, religious, cultural, sporting, and political spaces, Women's Month provide an opportunity not only to honor this legacy of resistance, but also to challenge norms and values that continue to promote and justify patriarchal chauvinism in our communities. Equally, the 3 strategic priorities announced by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa during the opening of Parliament, which are firstly, to drive inclusive growth and job creation, secondly, to reduce poverty and tackle the high cost of living, and thirdly, to build a capable, ethical, and developmental state, must assist us in addressing norms and values that promote and justify patriarchy in our society. A few days ago, on the 23rd of July, His Excellency President Ramaphosa also signed into law the Public Procurement Bill, the legislation that will regulate public procurement, including preferential procurement by all organs of state. We welcome the President's decisive intervention in this regard. As a department, we will be bringing forward tangible interventions through which this legislation will serve to redress the long-standing and ongoing socio-economic exclusion of women, youth, and persons with disabilities. The socio-economic empowerment of women is fundamentally about empowering society as a whole Through advocacy and mainstreaming, we will ensure that the plight of women in business, government, farm workers, mining, and among the unemployed receive the same level of attention and resources. Program Director, as part of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, during this month, we will intensify initiatives aimed at rallying all South Africans behind the country's fight against persistent acts of gender-based violence and femicide, including those perpetrated by intimate partners and family members. There is an urgent need to move beyond slogans and invest adequate resources towards a whole of society and a whole of government response to gender-based violence and femicide. The gender-based violence and femicide statistics are extremely worrying and concerning. We are fast-tracking the institutionalization of the National Council as part of the implementation of the National Council of the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act 9 of 2024. The setting up of this council is critical for enhancing accountability and strong leadership in government and society at large. Through legislation, we will strive for systemic change, prevention, and enforcement as constitutional imperatives. We aim to bring together researchers, scholars, advocates, and activists who will go beyond mainstream narratives to obtain a granular picture from communities facing violence at the community or street level, ensuring that justice is served. Members of the media, we have noticed a new trend that has emerged of employed women who are being targeted by men who, in the name of love, convince them to resign or take early retirement. This is done with the notion of starting businesses after which the same lifelong savings are extorted and men perpetrators disappear with all the earnings. We alert South African women not to be victims of such extortion and fraud.
The President will officiate and sign the Men's Pledge Against Gender-Based Violence. We will also have a men's march against gender-based violence in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, which will be led by Isilo Samabandla, King Misuzulu, and the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile. We will also launch the first ever report on the prevalence of gender-based violence in South Africa. We expect that all government departments in the three spheres of government, our state-owned enterprises, the private sector, and civil society, we expect them to participate in the Women's Month activities. Their participation must reflect and plan forward on how they have and will continue to empower women on the basis of the three priorities of the 7th administration. As a department, we are going to closely monitor the implementation of the three priorities in all sectors on how they benefit women, how they benefit young people, and how they benefit the peer persons with disabilities. Of course, we'll monitor also the month activities in all these sectors that I've mentioned. We will have a separate media engagement to detail the 7th administration priorities of the department. As we launch the Women's Month, we echo the voices of women who gathered at the first World Conference on Women in 1975 and declared that, and I quote, "In the world outside, we are ignored, we are invisible, we are not important." We have got to change these attitudes towards us, smilingly if necessary, angrily if necessary, and aggressively if necessary. Otherwise, there will be no such thing as true equality. Close quote. I thank you very much.
Women in Sport will be assisted by the Director General together with the Deputy Minister to take questions from the floor. We will where Minister it will be assisted by the Director General together with the Deputy Minister to take questions from the floor. You will be given an opportunity to raise your hand and media house that you're representing and ask questions for the Minister. As I've outlined earlier on, we also have a limited time. Colleagues will take few questions first round. If there's an appetite for second round, we'll take that and close it off. Thank you very much. If there are questions, we will then see by a show of hand and the media house that you're representing. Stumo and my dear brother. Thanks, Timo. Okay. Are there any other hands, colleagues? Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, you can come through DM. We'll start with the Deputy Minister and then we'll be followed by DG.
No, thank you so much for the questions and appreciating Minister's input. I just want us to be honest with how long it takes us to really reverse the struggles of women. When our constitution was enacted, our democracy was enacted, constitution adopted in 96. This 30-year period, we have seen progress that is leading us to gender parity, but we are not there. The Minister was articulating how long it has taken us to get to, having women in parliament, having women in private sector, in NGOs and so forth. But it's also what you see in the social fabric. Part of why we still have high levels of gender-based violence, part of why we still have inequalities is because patriarchy is still on the top layer. So let us not shy away from the importance of Women's Day, because it's saying that we need to celebrate women for who they are. We need to stand proud as women to say that we have progress, but we have so much to gain and so much to do. And when we say that it's Women's Month, we are putting a spotlight on that progress. Women's economic role is one of which we are prioritizing because we want to see growth. We want to put economy in the hands of women. Women must have that power. The second part is to then say, how do we breach the social issues, deal with the toxic masculinity that exists, that we actually look at positive masculinity where men must never become inferior. It's not there's no space actually for any kind of inequality, and we want to get to that level of equality. So I think we must really see that. So how are we going to do that? The program highlights the women's business, women's role in skills development, women's role in education, and looking at all the different sectors where women can play a role and have been playing a role. And that's what we want to put a spotlight in. There's no fear in really putting that spotlight. And we must also look at it from an intersectional lens. Race plays a role, class plays a role, geographical location plays a role, a person's ability and disability plays a role, and we really constantly have to lift the high level of inequalities that have existed. So, but we want to take it, while we take stock, but we also want to celebrate that. And that's why our theme of celebrating women's empowerment during democracy as part of the developmental agenda. And we have this agenda as part of our National Development Plan, as part of the AU 2063 agenda, but we are also part of the global community where we are also contributing to the Sustainable Development Goal, which is the 2030 agenda. So I think that's the part I wanted to touch on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister and DM. Thank you very much to the media. I would like to start with Miss South Africa. The law in South Africa allows a mother to a child to attain. Yeah, let me start. The law in South Africa allows citizenship through the mother. We no longer have the law that said it's only the father that can give a child citizenship. There are two things in South Africa. Either the mother is South African or both the parents were permanent residents in South Africa at the time when the child was born, but also that child must choose to use the right and decide to be permanent in South Africa. You can't use that right as a joint citizenship. So, but what maybe the question that needs to be asked is, the mother is South African with Mozambican descent. Is she really South African or not, or whatever? Those are the responsibilities of Home Affairs. The Department of Home Affairs can respond to that. But now I would like to respond to, we're celebrating Women's Day and yet the issue of development. If you look back from where South Africa comes from, previously women, the law provided that a man could assault a woman. That law has changed. Now the Constitution says everyone is equal in South Africa, and our laws provide for that. There's no law that discriminates against a woman. We have women literally in every area or career. They might not be many, but women have broken the glass ceilings. It might not be many, but they are worth celebrating. Women are now owners of mines. Not many, but it's an achievement that South Africa has achieved. Women are engineers. They are in every area. So I think that is worth celebrating. It might not be enough, but also when Minister was presenting indicated that young girls now, they are graduating in more numbers than males. Not that we celebrate that because we want a balance, but it's an achievement. So there's a lot of achievement that we do not say, but there is an achievement. But what the Deputy Minister said that in 1960, women marched. I think it's important to recognize that women have contributed into the democracy that we have today. Thank you very much.
Is that the only question? All right. Yeah, I think the question, Minister, is that your reaction to the controversy regarding your actions, Minister, legislative issues and how democracy allowed her to be part of the pageant, but he's more asking your view on the matter. Is it correct, Stu? Thanks.
No, thank you very much, our program director, and thank you for the questions. On the controversy that we're talking about, if the laws allow her to participate, so be it. If they don't, then of course she can't. I think our Home Affairs will assist us in that regard better than our department, because it's now about the citizenship, I just want to believe. So they've got to do their own investigations and check everything, and on the basis of that, she's South African, in whether through naturalization or any other process, then of course she should be allowed to participate, and as the department will support that if she meets all the requirements as set out for that. But then the question that was asked, what is it that we're going to do differently this time around? In my speech, I indicated that we're going to have another media briefing where we're going to outline our priorities as a department and what we are going to do. But just at the center of everything that we're going to do, it will be research, data, scientific data, so that we know for sure on the basis of research that we are improving, so that we know on the basis of research whether young women in South Africa are being appointed or being employed, and which ones and which sectors are employing them. So what we will be doing differently is that we're basing everything on research and data that will assist us to move forward. And with that, we'll be receiving, in fact, we'll be making announcements on whether, on the statistics or data that we have to the nation, and the progress that we'll be making. That will be that. But otherwise, like I've indicated, we definitely have our priorities based on the 3 priorities that were announced by the president, and how we're going to ensure that we advocate, that we mainstream as the department in the Republic of South Africa, ensuring that all departments, whatever that they do, whether private sector, public sector, whether our state-owned companies, and therefore you're talking about public administration, they implement, and whatever that they're implementing benefits the sectors that we are representing, we're going to actually announce that. So yes, indeed, we'll be looking at how we best move forward. And we'll actually be taking into account that which our predecessors have done, and say what is it that they did, and we move forward with that. If there are new things that we need to introduce, we definitely are going to introduce them. But we'll do that when we are announcing our priorities.
Thank you very much, Minister, DM, and the DG. Is there any follow-ups? All right. Stuma?
No, thank you so much. Look, there's a lot of fraudulent activities that are taking place in the country. And I think what Minister was saying is that how do we actually start to prioritize discussions with women, empower women, and also work with women where we actually look at prevention aspect to really deal with the victimization that is happening around people going around and extorting money and so forth, you know, in the name of love, or even in the name of citizenship, for that matter. We know these criminal activities are taking place and we must uproot them. But I also want us to realize that these are complex issues where all other key players, first it's around concern, and it's also around other departments playing a role once a case is reported. And you have to provide those evidence and so forth. What we must actually try avoid is situation where nationality of an individual, whether in the case of Miss South Africa or in the case of activities that are done by men, that we find ourselves in contravention with Section 9 of our own constitution that speaks about discriminating people on the basis of their nationality. South Africa, by nature, and our own constitution, does not discriminate anyone on the basis of nationality and many other grounds. But what we will not entertain as a country is when there is illegal activities taking place or entering a country without legal documents. And that's what we are fighting, that's what we're battling with. Adding to that, you then occupy or you are part of a South African community, and then you act in criminal activities that really disrupt the peace and security of the country. And those are some of the issues. Now, if you take the example of Mafikeng, like many others, the department has been engaging with many victims and intervening and supporting, providing psychosocial support, linking them to the criminal justice procedures, whether through police and so forth, for advice and even legal support. And you would understand, and I know DG will speak to that, part of our gender-based violence council work is the rapid response team that exists, and we are looking at it in terms of how that needs to be strengthened and how we want to continue to really prevent some of the gender-based violence and some of the criminal activities that are taking place. But at the level, what we can do and the limitation of it and what other departments like SABC and social development must be playing on that. So I can just give you our words that we have actually been trying to reach out to look at the Mafikeng matter and assess and see what interventions we can do, but also bring other stakeholders. It's more other stakeholders, it's more the person in this case that must also be part of the actions that needs to respond to that. But I think what we need to really be honest about, even gender-based violence in the country, it's not just a matter of law. President, just since 2022, he signed up to now, May 2024, 5 laws have been signed. Whether you're talking from Sexual Offences Amendment Act, whether you're talking around the issue of criminal and domestic violence, including the NPA amendment bill around that, you can actually see that law reform matter has been taken seriously. But what we need to reform, it's a social issue. Gender-based violence is not happening legally. It is happening in our homes, in our workspace, in our schools, in churches, everywhere. That means that the society, in this case, must be the key player to change behavior, to account for their behavior, but most importantly is the prevention agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DM. I think you've said a lot on that one. But on the issue of extortion, also, the reason why we are mentioning it in our speech is to actually alert the would-be victims. You referred to a case that you know, quite a number of other cases that one is aware of. And like you have said, it's employed working professionals for that matter. They fall into this relationship, and this person convinces this woman that we're going to open business, and they open, and the woman actually resigns or take early retirement. And then, of course, the money disappears. And I think it is our wish that even the media can help us so that we alert the would-be victims. There is a woman somewhere who is actually deciding to resign so that they can open or start business with this man. And after that, that money will disappear. You're speaking about 500,000. Others that I know of, one other I know of is 1.8 million rand, and it disappeared just like that. They take everything, and the woman will remain with a house that is not paid for, a car that has to be repossessed, and this is happening very frequently in South Africa. And that is why we think that we can no longer keep quiet about it. We have got to alert our women that there is this crime, this fraud, this extortion that is happening, and they should not fall victim of such. On the issue of crime, I think that M has responded to that. But the president himself said we have to treat and deal with gender-based violence and femicide as if it is a pandemic. And that actually says we've got all of us to pay attention to this matter. The DM is saying it's a societal matter, and it's very true. And therefore, all of us, whether we are traditional leaders, religious leaders, media persons, and so on, we've got to begin to talk about that. It has to start with me and with you, and say, am I an abuser? Am I abusing anybody? When I go home in the evening, how will I treat my wife, my girlfriend? It has to start there, within the family, as the DM is saying, within the community itself. So for us, prevention is important, but where it is happening, early detection is also important, so that we can then assist the victim. When you look at, there is this program called Ufelan. It is so painful, because you know that at the end of the day, this woman is going to die. You wish you can actually take that woman to somewhere, but you can't do it because it's actually on TV. And at the end of it all, somebody is going to die. And it is important, therefore, where abuse is happening, to detect it early so that you can save the person. You can treat that if there's need for treatment, or if there's a need for even rehabilitation, you can rehabilitate that person. Because some people stay in these abusive relationships because suddenly they can't even think for themselves. They think that they've got to stay, they can't live because they've got 4 children. And with this person who is abusing, who they've never had any peace in their relationship. And I think it's important, therefore, to begin to say, you can live alone. You can match out. You can leave this person. And you don't have to think about even committing suicide. There are so many boyfriends and men out there. I always say to my children at home, if he has left you, how many men have left us and we are here alive? We had boyfriends at some stage and they left us or disappointed us. And we didn't kill ourselves. Here we are alive and married and happy. So if that one disappoints you, there's another one who's not going to disappoint you. Wait for that one who's not going to disappoint you. And that is all. But don't think about killing yourself for somebody who's going to continue with his life. So we say all these things so that young people in particular, but women, persons with disabilities, cannot just stay in abusive relationships for the sake of this person who is a breadwinner. There are other breadwinners out there. They are just waiting for you, except for this one who's abusing you. I think I just wanted to say that. And therefore, there is a need for psychosocial management and treatment, because after they abuse, somebody might not even want to be in a relationship, or somebody will just be something else, and therefore the need for rehabilitation. And that is why I'm saying it's prevention, it's early detection, it's treatment, it's rehabilitation that is required in order to deal with this scourge of gender-based violence. Imagine if there's one thing that is bad, is rape. If I want to sleep with somebody, I must sleep. It's my right to do that. But no man has a right to enforce himself onto my body. No man. And that is, no man can do that and should do it. Whether I'm married to him or not, I must agree. You're not going to insult me in the kitchen and I go to the bedroom, you see somebody, a sex object in me. No, it doesn't work like that. So I just want to say, these are the issues that we're going to deal with, and we're not going to get tired of doing it. I go to church every Sunday, they read John 14, and every time it sounds new, and therefore it makes me to repent, and we're going to do that so that ultimately we have a gender-based violence-free society, and it is possible to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, DM, and the DG. I think, colleagues, that should be the end of business for today, and really appreciate the opportunity, your presence. Even when you call you tomorrow, please avail yourself, because the issue of gender-based violence, women empowerment, it's quite a critical societal issue. It can happen to any one of us, it can happen to me, it can happen to you, and therefore working with you guys to advance the message will really change somebody's life, because we have a society to build, we've got children to look after, and it's our duty to ensure that we inform them adequately, but also sharing the same message to them. As we go home, let's remember that we are celebrating 30 years of freedom towards women development. It's a theme that we are going to run with the whole of August month, in order to ensure that it's a developmental agenda that we want to see happening until 2063 going forward. Thank you very much.